Thanks everyone for joining me today. We're going to talk about budget travel tips. 2023 is the end of August, so we're always looking at travel in this group. So, wanted to share what we have from experienced travelers, new travelers, questions, share what we find, and maybe even what's important as far as making choices when we look for travel. So, I think one of the biggies that will start out the conversation is around how you budget your money. Are you going to put more money towards the lodging, the transportation, how you get there? Are you looking for like a package? So I guess I'll start with, I'll pick on you, Heather, as far as looking for travel. And I know you don't travel as much as maybe others, but when you're considering where you're going, is it the lodging? What kind of part of the equation really matters to you?
Well, I don't remember ever being in Alaska before, and I love the Northern Lights, and we don't see moose very much anymore in northern Minnesota or Canada because of some disease that's hitting them,
Hmm.
plus deer. So I just thought it would be fun to go to Alaska and see what animals they have there
Sounds great. Thanks for
and
sharing.
meet new friends.
Yeah.
So
Elaine, when you're uh
the destination is the most important for you, Heather?
Um, yeah, it's just I don't travel that much. All of you travel a lot more than I do. I usually go up to Lake Superior or I go to Nebraska to see Kara. You know, and this year I'm not going to Minnesota because I'm going with April to Alaska. So it just if something interests me, I might consider going. It just depends. I'd like to go to Vermont sometime.
yeah, so it's destination.
And you won't be too far off the course of the solar eclipse next April.
Right.
Have you thought about traveling closer to where it is from your, because it goes right across the United States from Texas all the way up to Maine.
Maybe not. Kathy, I know you travel a lot. What's kind of the most important? Is it, like you said, destination, how the group is going, kind of some of the factors that go into.
Probably first thing for me is the destination because I have a long bucket list of places that I want to go. Um, Lodging, not so much. I don't have to stay in 5 star or even 4 star lodging as long as it's clean and safe. That's fine for me. I have not, though, tried staying in hostels. I know a lot of people stay in hostels and find that that's a good way to save money, particularly in Europe. I do try to look for uh, trips that don't, if I'm going on a tour, that don't have either don't have a single supplement at all or have a low single supplement because I'm pretty much always going by myself. If I go on a cruise, I always get the cheapest cabin I can get
Hmm.
because I don't spend that much time in the cabin. I mean, what do you do in the cabin? You sleep, you bathe, and you get in and you change clothes, and the rest of the time you're outside of the cabin and you're, just as luxurious as the rest of the people in the cruise, you know, I don't need a balcony or those kinds of things because I goes up and sit on the deck and read and look at the ocean and that kind of thing. So those are probably the main things from my standpoint as far as looking at things that I can do to save money.
Right, right. Elaine, for you, what would you say kind of structure do you use when you're looking at your travel dollars?
Um, I think, like for most people, it's the destination first. But on the other hand, sometimes travel can be driven, say, by hobby interests or whatever. So on one of my trips to Japan, I love the onsen, the baths and everything. And so I structured a trip around going to different baths, like famous hot springs and things like that. And on another trip, I recently posted on the Travel Collective about this, but my husband and I used to really love to dance and ballroom dancing. And when he passed away, I suddenly thought, boo-hoo, no more dancing. But there's one particular year I thought, well, why not? And I took myself to the Kaiser Ball at the Imperial Palace in Vienna. And so, again, you can structure your travel around experiences that you want. And even looking at Kathy's background there, that looks like the beautiful blue lagoon there in Iceland. And so there again, sometimes you can be driven less by the destination, like the country, and more by experiences that you'd like to have.
Yeah, I like that, Elaine. I think that's a good point because I know for myself, and it is fall, and as you, many of you on this call know how I'm just crazy about fall foliage, but in looking at the pricing, New England during fall foliage, everyone knows that destination. So again, it doesn't become now so much about the destination because if I'm not, leading the tour, obviously I'm going to be funding all of my money on my own travel. So then it's becoming about the experience. Where else can I go and see the change of leaves, or even like for the Northern Lights, there's not one place to go experience that. So, I can look at the map of the United States and say, you know what, there's other places that have hardwood trees, that have maples. No, it may not have exactly what New England has, but the offset may be price. I may be able to get cheaper airfares, I may be able to get cheaper lodging, all of the other things that come into play because sometimes yes, there is a destination that you just have to go to, a country, a city, experiencing Paris or London or whatever place that may be. And so then that has to kind of be the top choice and figure out the rest. But for sometimes, it's like Elaine said, you just want that experience. You want to go dancing, you want to go to baths, you want to see the dark skies, whatever that may be. So thanks for joining us, R. Do you want to take a quick minute? We're right in the middle of recording, but feel free to share your name and where you're joining from. We're talking about budget travel.
I'm Lazarini and I'm from Chicago, but right now I'm in Tampa, or near Tampa. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice. So we're talking about kind of when you're
I
making.
just moved.
Nice. I'm glad you found our group. Thanks. So what we were just talking about
Okay.
when you travel, is it, what kind of thing is the most important? Is it where you go, how you get there, where you stay, what kind of trip it is? Do you want to share a little on that or?
Yes, I will. I always look for places that I can get cultural learning. Like I learn about their culture. So I usually pick Asia, but this time I want to go to Europe and maybe go to Italy so I can see where my grandpa was born and all that stuff. Yeah, but I've never been in Italy, so it'll be nice. To me, it will be important to research places to stay, what to bring, the temperature, what is like the temperature during that time over there, and especially food, where to go to places.
Yeah, nice. Italy, fabulous.
Of Italy. What part of Italy is your family from?
Northern Italy. Mhm.
What part of Italy?
At this moment, I don't remember. It starts with a L. I didn't grow up with the family, so I don't like 100% know where to go to. But if you see my last name, they do have uh, castle or mansion stuff, and I forgot what the city is, but it's called Lazzarini
Oh,
also.
nice.
Yeah, but I don't know them.
That's great. So you might want to, because Airfare International, you might want to start looking now and set some air alerts. Because when you're looking for airfare, we are seeing this sporadic, and I was on a lot of different websites today. Everything from Nerd Wallet, where he compares different credit cards that you can use, maybe to pay your bills, buy your groceries, and accumulate miles that then you could convert to use for air travel, or even things like and one of them was very interesting, and I'll throw this out there now since I kind of brought up airfare. It's called milesforopinions.com, and it's American Airlines has paired up with this site, and then so far it's only American Airlines, so it must be something only they are doing. So in other words, you
Mhm.
fill out surveys and you earn miles only on American, but American, travels, they have routes internationally. So just another way to increase your airline miles by taking your time essentially to fill out
Mhm.
surveys. So with anything budget, there's always, you got to give, or there's trade-offs. But I thought, wow, what another great way to maybe earn miles on a particular
Mhm.
program.
Is that in addition to the miles that I accumulated on the credit
Yep,
card?
yep, yeah.
Oh, okay. I have their credit card.
Yeah, so you should check
Mhm.
it out, and I'll put that in the show notes. It's something fairly new. I just went to the site today, and it definitely is just for American Airlines because you need to put in your American Airlines award number, and then that information needs to match so that when you do the surveys, the points can accumulate that on your card. But I thought that's kind of cool. It has nothing to do then with buying. It's just giving your travel input, your opinions. So hopefully,
Mhm.
what a great idea. So what are
Yeah,
some
I got my American Express card through Delta, and that gives me a mile for every dollar I spend using that credit
Mhm.
card on anything.
nice?
Yeah, I also have United. It gives me miles for every dollar I spend too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Elaine, do you work with any like I know you're in Canada, so do you work with credit card programs? Are there tips you have for finding air deals? I don't know.
No, I'm all ears when it comes to finding air deals. I don't think I get any.
It's
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, I used to
Mhm.
belong to what is here called the Air Miles program. Um, but that has been, bought out to save it from bankruptcy. And it used to be good for air mile or like for trips, but they've really increased the number of miles that you need for a trip to the point that like you still have to pay taxes. And
Oh,
once you've paid the taxes, you've pretty well covered the cost of a trip like competitively when an airline has a seat sale. So I just look for seat sales.
yeah. Well, this kind of sounds like pretty much the rest of us too, is looking for sales, looking for, and that's even what the experts are saying too, that it's really changed. It used to be if you booked on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, you would find better fares. I mean, and it's kind of gotten all over the map when you read um, there's people that spend hours, Nerd Wallet's one. There's other sites where they kind of, I think Money, Time Magazine. I found some other websites too where they're always analyzing this information, like what's the best day to book. And, I did find that when I'm searching for flights, and if you're using a site like Google Flights even, and you put in dates, just by switching those dates, like if you're able to fly on a Tuesday versus a Saturday, you will get a better price. And
Mhm.
also, as we all know, again, it comes down to time. Do you want to transfer planes twice to get that cheaper fare, or so there are little things like that. But signing up, and watching, like if there's a route that I know I'm going to do, like my home city to Anchorage, I'm signing up for alerts and kind of just keeping my eye on that. But eventually it comes down to, sometimes you just have to buy. You buy because you know you need to be there on X day, and you don't want the price to increase either. So it's
Mhm.
juggle.
Yeah,
Also,
I
I
haven't used
noticed.
any of these cheaper discount sites, but I've heard about them, so I bookmarked them. Skyscanner
Mhm.
and Scott's Cheap Flights.
Mhm.
Have any of you guys used them?
I've signed up for a couple newsletters where I get, notifications, but they do cost. You do pay for a year subscription, but I'm hoping that, again, offsetting that subscription with a random cheap flight that comes across my radar, because it's all about, I think it was JetBlue or somebody the other day just ran like a 3-day, a 2-day sale where they just do this quick pop up and run certain routes at cheaper prices. The
Mhm.
other thing I found is, if you're near a major airport, like if you're near LAX, or you're near, or like for me, Las Vegas, is watching for these newer airlines. I know a lot of people don't like Spirit, they don't like Frontier, and obviously because, there is tack on, and once you go through all the steps, oftentimes you're back at the same price you would be for
Mhm.
a major carrier. But some of the new routes, like that Avelo, Avelo Air, is popping up. I was able to travel with the same amount of luggage to go to Colorado when they had that route. Now that route doesn't exist anymore, but there is like Las Vegas to Sonoma. There's Las Vegas to, there's a couple other cities on the, the west, but these are kind of regional carriers, so it's going to kind of depend on where you're at and your willingness to, maybe try it and not know, at least for, and
Mhm.
like even Spirit and some of the others, they're only running some of these routes. And I know when I lived in the Midwest, there were only certain days that it would fly, say the route from Iowa to Florida for, Disney World or
Mhm.
whatever.
I know there's a route from O'Hare to Florida that sometimes they put tickets at $30, $50, but they only fly 2 days a week.
Yep.
I believe it's Sunday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My friend uses it all.
it just
Mhm.
depends on what you're willing to put up with flying with Spirit. I mean, as long as you go knowing that you're, you have to pay for, um, you have to pay extra to carry on. Um, those things can be factored in before you pick one of those cheapy airlines. And
Mhm.
I am on the mailing list for Alaska, and Alaska frequently has sales. Uh,
Yeah.
so I've taken advantage of some of those to fly domestically.
Right. Right.
I have to admit that when it comes to budget travel, airfare is one of the places where um, I'm going to be willing to pay a little more. So that's not going to be the place where I really try and get the deepest discounts. Um, and the reason is, um, with the pandemic and everything else, we, at least in Canada, have seen a few little regional airlines pop up, little upstarts, and they're here today, but they might be gone tomorrow. And they don't have a good track record of bringing you back, or, and so there's horror stories of people being left stranded. So if it's a precious vacation, and if I don't have much flexibility, then I'm more inclined to go with a trustable carrier that's been in business for some time. I never fly business class, but I'll still, hedge my bets depending on what the destination is and whether there are segments or whether it's a direct flight. I might pick the very cheapest flight, But on the other hand, if there's multiple segments, I might pick the middle fare where there's some prospect of help. Maybe not fully cancelable, but some kind of help if somebody screws up and I get stuck somewhere.
And with multiple stops, you're more likely to get your luggage lost too.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and I kind of agree with that too. If there's somewhere that you definitely want to make sure that you get to, picking a major, and also, fewer connections is probably going to guarantee that hopefully, and flying again, as we hear a lot, being one of those first flights out of the day, so that, if things start to back up due to weather, they're probably going to. Um,
Although I did have a good experience when I went to Norway flying Norwegian Air when they were flying international flights from the United States.
mhm.
I got, oh gosh, my fare round trip, I think, was half of what it was going to be on either United or Delta.
Mhm.
Fortunately, they stayed in business for several years after that, but now they've closed their flights from the continental United States and North America again, and now they're just doing cheapy flights around Europe again, like they were before.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would be my hesitation too. Like sometimes when you go on those aggregates, like you go on Kayak or Skyscanner or something, and you see a cheap deal, but then you click it and it takes you to a third party website. Then I'm like, no, I think I'd rather go buy the ticket through the actual airline. Because too, I've seen domestically, even in the US, it's like, Southwest, a weather event happens and everybody gets canceled, and the counter is only going to really work with you if you booked your ticket through their carrier, even American, United. Otherwise, they're kind of like, nope, because they have too many people, and they're going to deal with them. If you bought it through some offshoot little aggregator, you're kind of out on your own. So it comes down to what you're willing to, yeah, inconvenience yourself with.
So should we welcome Lessa?
Yeah, Lisa's here. Can we welcome Lisa? I am recording, so I don't know if she was.
You're muted.
Lisa, you're muted. Did you want to introduce yourself?
I just saw that. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm
Anyway,
just
I'm
trying.
here. Sorry I'm late. Just stuff, So, are we just talking mainly about tips for
We're
travel
talking
and things?
about budget travel tips, and we're recording about, so when we went around earlier and we were sharing, when you're thinking about travel, what is kind of the most important factor? Is it destination? Is it experience? Is it the type of lodging? Or yeah, where do you put the value on choosing where you're?
For me, it's about the destination. But Kathy was talking about Scott's Cheap Flights, which is now called Going, just the word going. And their big deal is don't worry about the destination. Look at what we have and take the cheapest flight and just go. And I've never traveled like that. It's kind of intriguing because I'm 99.9% sure I'm going to like wherever I go. Because why wouldn't you want to go somewhere new and different? But that's still hard to do. To me, it's backwards, to find a flight and then decide, okay, now I got to figure out what to do there. Do I take a small group tour there? Do I just do it on my own? Do I have to plan what to do, all that? So I've been on Scott's Cheap Flights or Going for about a year now. And I actually upgraded to their middle. I don't know if it's premium, but they have the free service and they have two levels. And I'm in the middle level. I've yet to buy a ticket from them, but I think it's because I'm using it the way I'm used to, which is like, I know where I want to go and I'm waiting for them to show me a ticket that's a great price. And I try and book pretty far in advance, or I plan far in advance. And their tickets are usually more closer to today. Like maybe an email, you get emails many times a week, but they're maybe from today, and the flights will be good through, let's say, November, which I already want to have it locked in by then. So I'm not yet to that kind of thinking that probably is the best way to use their services or their flights. Maybe I never will be. I don't know. Just to being like, I want to go somewhere, but I'll just wait and see what the airfare is. Like, that's crazy to me, but that's how people do it. So I know when my sister taught overseas, I might have said this once before, she taught with two teachers, two young guys, and they would wait until maybe, let's just say Tuesday, like, let's just say Tuesday. Every Tuesday, they would see what the fares were, the cheapest place they could go for that weekend. And they go. And on Wednesday, we're like, where are you guys going this weekend? Oh, we got a, $200 round trip from, I think that was when she was in Turkey. Yeah. So like from Ankara to, let's say Stockholm, we got a $200 round trip. So we're going there. We found a $300 round trip to Prague. So we're going there and it's just a different way. And they were like 3 decades younger than I am. So it's a different way that we've all grown up traveling, so anyway, I'm still old fashioned. I get my trip first and then look at the tickets. And I pretty much like what Elaine said, I don't want to pay more than I have to, but I'm pretty much the middle of the road. I sort them by price. And then I look at the total destination of the trip, no matter how many stops. If you've got a 12-hour stop somewhere, even if it's only one stop, is it worth it? The only time I've done that is last year when I went to Mongolia. I had a 22-hour layover in Honolulu. Oh, darn. So I had to pay for a hotel room, but, I was on the beach. So that was my only time that I've had a good long layover. Other than that, like if it's, some of them can be, well, yeah, it's only $100 if you want to go take 36 hours to get there. I'm like, no, I'm too old for that. I'm not 20 anymore. So kind of like Elaine's, I weigh the price and how the total duration of the trip.
Yeah. Well, that's great insight on the going and the Scots thing.
It hasn't worked for me yet. I know when I went to India last year, I paid a lot of money to get to India. I was watching prices, and there's two gals that flew out of San Francisco, I think, and they got it on Scott's cheap flights. And they're, it was like round trip to India for, I don't know, it was like half, whatever it was half what I paid. So that's kind of why I decided to sign up for this, but I've still never bought anything there.
Yeah, and we'll share that.
And it is, at least it used to be when it was Scott's cheap flight. There you can get it free too, but you don't get insight to as many things. And they do, if you pay for this, the very top level service, they send you last minute deals, like if there's a mistake fare.
Right.
And so I haven't paid to have that, because again, I like to know where I'm going ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. So did I see someone have their hand up?
I did.
Oh, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you travel, you look at the prices of the tickets in the flight first, then just choosing the country, doing the research, and then try to find tickets?
I don't do that, but that's what they do if you use Going. They just say, look at it, here's all the cheap flights today, or then probably in a day or two I'll get another email, and they'll just give you, and you put in like your top 6. They don't do it based on destination. They do it based on where you fly out of. So I fly out of Portland, so I'm kind of like April. It's not a major airport. Like if I fly out of Seattle, it's cheaper, but I don't have a place to leave my car there. But they do, so you just put in like your top 6 places you might fly out of, and then they send you specials from that airport. Like it might be Portland to, let's just say Fort Lauderdale, but it never would be, because you're not going to have a cheap fare to Fort Lauderdale. But let's just say, there might be a super cheap fare there, and you're like, oh, well, their thing is, we got a cheap fare to Fort Lauderdale. You need to jump on it. That's what we're doing. And I'm like, well, I hadn't planned to go there, so nah. So that's why I haven't taken advantage.
Where do you get this information from?
Look at the website Going.
Going?
Yeah, just the word Going. It used to be Scott's cheap flights until 4 or 5 months ago.
And
And
I'll put links in the show notes too, and I'll email you those too. So
I think for the right person, it sounds cool. Like, yeah, just find a flight and go. And I'm just like, that's not me. So, but it might be somebody else. Obviously it is because they seem to be very popular.
I would
great.
say one other thing about flight strategies. So if you end up where you have to pay a big price to get where you're going, see what else there is in the area. So, for example, I know someone who's planning to travel to Egypt, and at first they talked to me about a trip to Morocco as well, but it's actually too far. So instead, they are coupling their trip to Egypt with a trip to Jordan. So instead of taking two expensive flights, they're making one, and then they've got a short, relatively inexpensive flight over to another part of the world. Likewise, if you're flying to Spain or Portugal, that would be an ideal time to take a little hop over to Morocco. So there's lots of places in the world where you can go and you just end up having no choice but to pay a lot for your airfare, but then see what else there is in the region, because you might be able to see another wonderful place in the world for relatively little money.
Yeah,
For me, that's why I decided to do a tour that went to 4 different countries in Southeast Asia, because I thought if I'm flying all that way, I want to see a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was there for a whole month, and we went to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and it was a wonderful trip. The only bad thing was that we came home on February 28th, 2020. And I had selected as my airfare Korean Air. So going over, it was wonderful. And the airport in Seoul is a beautiful airport.
Interesting.
The night before we were supposed to leave, we were in Hanoi, and I get a text from Korean Air just saying, all of our flights out of Hanoi have been canceled, and this was all due to COVID. Good luck.
Out.
Not we'll put you on this other airline or anything like that, and I thank God I was on a tour, and so I called the tour guide and said, help, he said, don't worry. And he said, we'll just go to the airport at the same time. I know people at the airport and I'll get you on a flight. And he did. I flew home on Air Taiwan and actually got home at the same time I would have gotten home if I'd gone on Korean Air.
Yeah, nice.
I told him, I said, I love Vietnam, I love Hanoi, but I don't want to be here forever.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit on tips for lodging. Do you guys have some ways that you save money on lodging? Do you want to share on that? Elaine?
I stay in hostels in Korea, and it was only $135 for a whole month. And that same trip, I stopped to the Philippines also, to Cebu in the Philippines, and went back and stayed another week in Korea, and then came back. And I only spent $135 for all that time that I stayed at the hostel. Most of them, you share the room, but I knew the owner. He's a friend with a friend of mine, Korean friend, and he gave me a room for myself. And I was traveling with my youngest daughter at the time. She was there, and we got a room for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So
it was really cheap.
You found the hostel then, it sounds like, through someone you knew, or was there a website that you would recommend to people for hostels?
No, I look for hotels first, But then I thought of him because I know him for a long time, a friend. He's the son of one of my friends, and he lives in Korea. He's a pilot for Air Jeju,
Oh,
and he told me, "Oh, you can stay with my friend," and blah blah. I'm like, really? Yeah, and it was a hostel, and I just paid that much. I didn't know the guy, the owner, but it was really nice actually, and it was very clean. Um, Koreans are very clean people, so the place was super clean. You cannot use shoes to go inside. And before I went, I did some research about manners and because we don't want to disrespect them. So that's why when you say about booking a trip first, I actually do the research first before I need to know where I'm going, and I look on the map to save on time instead of traveling from one city and going up and down and all that stuff. I go like I don't know how to explain it. Like from point A, B, and C, but saving time from one place to the next.
Right.
Mhm.
Sounds
I
good.
mean, I really enjoyed the stay there. That was my first time ever staying at a hostel, so I had a good experience.
Good to
They're
know.
usually young people most of the time, like college students. There's a few adults. Mhm. It's not for kids. It's just my teenager, and he was the owner of a. My friend knew him, but it's not for teens to stay there. I mean, children.
Right.
Mhm. A lot of
Thanks.
them go parties and stuff. I went for the cultural experience.
Right, right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing. Lisa, I think you had your hand up.
when I went to New Zealand, um, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, there were three of us. So it was we often stayed in Airbnbs. I like to stay in Airbnbs. I don't really take advantage of the cooking facilities. Like a lot of people say, it saves money because you can cook. But I want to eat out when I'm traveling. I want to see what everybody there eats. So I don't do too much of that. But we did, for some reason, having three people, it was hard to find places. Um, for some reason. I don't even remember why. So we ended up staying in a couple hostels. And at that time, there was two of us were probably almost 60, and one of the gals was maybe early 50s. And so we were way older than the demographic. But one of them we stayed in was the kind of like we think is the regular type where there's a dorm room and everybody has a locker underneath the bunk beds. There were 6 people in the room, and they were all stinky boys other than us, like college guys with stinky clothes and clothes hanging out the window. But it's like no big deal. It's just like real life, right? That's how these guys are. And we were these old ladies compared to them. And but it was totally fine, totally fine. Bathroom down the hall. We stayed in another one that was they had it was all little cabins. So we had a cabin for 3 people, and we had to go outside and go down to the shared shower. And another one we stayed in was, um, I think it's because they weren't full. We had a room to ourselves, the three of us, but it was supposed to sleep 6. And there were other people in other rooms. Some of the rooms were like for 2 people. So it was kind of almost like a hotel, but it was called a hostel. So actually, we stayed in another hostel. We stayed in a lot of hostels, actually, now that I think about it. But they were all different types. But several times we had a room to ourselves, the 3 of us. So, but even the one with, with the stinky college boys, it was still fun. And we laughed about the stinky college boys. So it was fine. It wasn't, because I was like, a hostel, I'm 60, and it was totally
Hmm.
fine. It's like, because now everybody says it's not like it used to be. There are people
Hmm.
our age that are using hostels. And we didn't share the cooking facilities um, at any of them, but people were there. Obviously, the younger kids were used to staying in hostels because they all had their big bags of food and they'd put them in their own locker in the kitchen. And we walked in and we put like bottled water in the fridge or something. I don't know, cheese we bought or something. And they had like the full on. They were going to be making meals for a couple weeks or whatever. And so it's definitely a different culture than what we were wanting, which is like we just want a place to stay while we explore. So I'm not opposed at all to hostels anymore, but I'm more hostel or Airbnb than a hotel person. I don't know why. I just am.
So do you have certain websites that you want to share that if others come across this recording later, they'll know where you find your hostels?
I've never used one of the hostel websites. I don't even remember how we look. There's definitely not. Well, my sister has hotels.com, so we use that occasionally, but not very often. Not when you're at some remote place. I think we just searched. Well, we just searched on Airbnb. That's where we always search first. We always search Airbnb, and I don't know how we made it to the hostels when we couldn't find Airbnbs. We went over Christmas and New Year's for 3 weeks. It was a hard time to find. It's vacation time, so that was hard. So I'm sorry I don't have a.
No, that's fine.
It was 5 years ago, and brain cells leaving us and all that stuff. So
that's okay. Just wanted to share. Kathy or Elaine, did you have something you wanted to share about lodging?
I'm just putting in the chat a website that I haven't actually used, but a friend of mine recommended for finding hostels in Europe.
Okay. And I know there's also on Facebook, and they also they have a couple different groups I came across. There's a site called Host a Sister. So, and you don't even have to necessarily give a room in your location, but you do need to be part of the requirement on Host a Sister is that if someone's coming to town, that you might meet them for coffee or offer a meal or something like that, or show them around town. And there's a couple different. They're on Facebook. I'll share the groups in the follow-up email and in the show notes. There's one for over 50, so they don't all aren't geared towards, there's different ages. So if you wanted to be in the little bit older group, and again, what a great opportunity maybe to connect with someone in another country. And
I've used Airbnb in Norway and in France. And I only go with superhosts, that have really high ratings. But particularly when I was in Norway, I always try to stay at a place where the host is present and I rent a room, and particularly in Norway, I just met the nicest people, and they told me all the good local places to go to eat that weren't too expensive and that kind of thing. So, it's certainly something to investigate, particularly in those large European cities where hotel rates can be pretty outrageous.
Yeah, exactly. Excellent tip. Elaine, did you have something you wanted to share about lodging?
Well, I guess I'm a little bit different. I know I'm not a hostel person, but if it's about saving money, absolutely don't stay at any of the big international hotels. I mean, why? You're never going to get a good deal there, and there's no local charm or anything about them. So I do prefer to look like I'm more a hotel person, I guess. But I always stay at places that are locally owned and operated. And so I stayed at traditional ryokans in Japan, and in Turkey, a little family-run hotel, just, literally steps from all of the major tourist sites. And then, of course, in Morocco, well, the big cities are filled with the old family mansions that have been converted to riads, which are pretty much like little boutique hotels, but there's only 5 or 6 rooms in most of them. So they're very intimate, and you get to meet local people and have local food, and yet you get a private room. So you can travel very inexpensively, really, for accommodations by doing those kinds of things. And again, it depends what your priorities are. So for me, safe, clean, and quiet, and if possible, within walking distance of some of the things that I'm there to see, or walking distance to public transportation.
So when you've gone gone to Japan and stayed in ryokans, do you just Google ryokan and the name of the city that you're going to be in, or the resort that you're going to be in?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
But
good
how you
information.
find these locally owned places? Is there a website directly that we can go to and find these places, little places?
Possibly not, because again, these are very small businesses, probably family owned, and they don't have the money or the resources to have great big websites or belong to associations and things like that. But pretty much if you know what your destination is and you search for hotels, when you see the listing, you're probably going to be able to see very quickly what the local ones are. And some of the local tourist associations, for example, or travel associations will have listings of the local places.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is to not feel like you have to stay right in the heart of the city. You know, for example, Washington, D.C. You know, the hotels that are right in central Washington, D.C. are expensive, and you can find a lot cheaper places to stay out along the metro lines, you know, going down to maybe Alexandria or up to Silver Springs or someplace like that. And it doesn't take you long to get into the city, and all the metro stations, you know, converge on the mall. So, you know, you can save quite a bit of money for, you know, doing a trip like that, by not staying right in the heart of the city.
Yeah, and I know you were asking about finding these local places. Often go on the travel forums like TripAdvisor. They have a feature called Forum, so don't just always look at what they're listing, because Elaine is right. A lot of the really small family owned, whether it's Europe or even New England, sometimes they don't have budget. They're not going to be listed in these traditional places. You almost literally have to, go to a tourist board site or chamber of commerce, or go into the forums, because past travelers will often share these smaller places. I mean, when I went to Italy with my husband for the first time, literally I was in those forums. I was digging in. Rick Steves has a forum for Europe. Boaters, Frommers. There's a lot of forums, travel forums, and past travelers will say, "Hey, we stayed with this couple." I mean, and literally, that's how I got a name and a number of a woman that had like 2 rooms in the best, most amazing location on the coast of Italy. And yes, we had to climb a bunch of stairs, but she was very clear about that. But I mean, you wouldn't have found her otherwise without that name and number. And because so many other travelers had recommended her, I could see on the map. I'm like, you know what? Finally I think she had one barely little page she created somewhere on the internet. But again, you wouldn't have found it without somebody, sending you that way.
I just want to mention one other thing. If people are into taking cruises, I never take the ship's excursions because they're always really expensive. And you can usually do a lot better by using a site like Viator, or there's one called shoreexcursions.com, where you can get almost exactly the same trips that they have on from the cruise ship, but they'll usually be anywhere from a half to 3/4 of the price that the cruise ship charges.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I'm going on a cruise from Santiago, Chile to LA next spring. And the main part of the cruise is that you go to Machu Picchu. But the cruise was really cheap and they only had $100 single supplement.
Oh, wow.
The Machu Picchu, it's 2 nights and 3 days, but you have to travel like quite a ways from the shore to get there. There's airplane rides and there's train rides. And so the cruise was like, I don't know, $1,300, $1,400. It was pretty inexpensive for almost 3 weeks. The Machu Picchu shore excursion is $3,000. And you're there for 4 hours.
Wow.
But because it's not just a day trip, you know, you've got all this transportation, and the cruise ship, you get off on one port and the cruise ship continues up the coast and you get back on at a different port. So I'm going to have to do the $3,000 one. I've decided, because I don't want to risk it when it's multiple days and nights. You know, that's too big a risk for me, that if we don't make it back to that port in time for whatever reason, I'm stuck and have to get myself to the next port, right? But if you're on the Princess one or whichever line, they'll wait for you. So I just got to tell myself, well, that's the one shore excursion I'm doing, and thank goodness it was a really inexpensive cruise. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Kathy. It's so easy to do things on your own, and that you're not tied into that really high price. But when I saw that price, $3,000, I'm like, I didn't even pay that for the cruise. But they know that's why you're on the cruise, right? That's because
Yeah.
it's Machu Picchu. So anyway.
And the other advantage of doing something like Viator or shore excursions is they're usually small groups. So like when I went in 2019 through the Panama Canal, when we stopped in Guatemala, you know, the cruise line offered a trip to Antigua, and I wanted to see Antigua, but I found this almost the identical trip on Viator, and there were only 5 people in the SUV, and again, it was a lot cheaper. So it's at least worth doing the investigation on some of those other sites to see if you can beat the price that the cruise lines, because the cruise lines give a huge kickback to the tour operators, you know, and then take their own profit off the top of that.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, Kathy, they're small groups if you go elsewhere, but when you're on the cruise ship shore excursion, you're on one of those big buses, and that is not my way to travel.
Usually got 40 to 50 people on those tours.
Yeah. Good stuff today, guys. Well, it's basically 5 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this budget trip episode here. So thank you all for joining and giving your budget tips. And as always, check back. We have more events happening. I'm thinking Sunday seems to work good for everyone. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening, and I'll include the show notes of where to find some of these budget tips. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.